Welcome to the Dragon's Library, your source for games, movies, shows, and more. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Dragon's Library. So today, we have something that actually surprised me. Not just surprised me by not being terrible, but surprised me by being really good. And that surprise was Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new Star Wars spin-off miniseries on Disney+. Now to start this off, I will admit that I did not plan to watch or review this series. However, I decided to delay my review of Umbrella Academy Season 3 due to time constraints. It came out right before I was planning to review it, like literally that same day, and I was busy at work. And this show was shorter and just finished, so it ended up being what I reviewed. I literally just watched it the night, like a few hours ago, before I recorded this. The main reason for this disinterest was my complete apathy towards the premise. A New Hope prequel about what Obi-Wan was up to just sounded pointless, but I was pleasantly surprised and later really engaged. Something that isn't happening a lot lately is that I've been surprised by things I've expected to be a lot worse than they were. However, unlike Lightyear that had a few good scenes that elevated the movie above, just why does this exist, and the new Jurassic World movie, I wouldn't just classify Obi-Wan as okay. This is actually good, and I thought this was going to be pointless. So, let's get into this a little bit. This is not like Boba Fett. The series takes the premise and cast and uses them to effectively explore Obi-Wan in the fallout of Order 66 before A New Hope, when he's still raising Luke while the Inquisitors are hunting down the remaining Jedi. Sort of the same time period we're looking at in Rebels. The plot starts off 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, and Obi-Wan, or Ben, is depressed, traumatized, and working as a meat packer. In his spare time, he keeps an eye on Luke, but is constantly rebuffed by Owen Lars, who doesn't want anything to do with him, due to the latter's concern for Luke. Because Obi-Wan wants him to eventually train, he keeps trying to give him, specifically toys that'll fuel an interest in the world beyond Tatooine, whereas Owen is more concerned with Luke as a child, growing up now and having a happy life, and not being, murdered potentially by his father, who is a mass murderer at this point. Then a Jedi is found on Tatooine by the Inquisitors. Basically, they're Force users who were kidnapped as children or turned from young or disillusioned Jedi and trained as Jedi hunters under Vader. But he manages to escape and goes to Obi-Wan for help. Obi-Wan, thoroughly disillusioned and fearing for Luke's safety, tells the Jedi to bury his lightsaber and disappear into a new identity. Essentially, Obi-Wan has become jaded, and literally he's only here to look after Luke. He's not here to revive the Jedi Order, he's not here to inspire the rebellion, he rebuffs people who try to get him to fill those roles at first. Which is a little weird considering he was a symbol of hope for the rebellion and someone they went to for, aid when things got serious, from what we saw earlier. However, he does not listen, the Jedi, and he dies. And at first you'd think the Inquisitors would find out about Luke as a result of, maybe they followed him, maybe they were watching him. But plot twist, it's Leia time. Yeah, that's right, on Alderaan, rest in peace Alderaan, Leia gets kidnapped in an attempt to draw Obi-Wan out of hiding by one of the Inquisitors, who knows of his past connection to her father, or adopted father at least, Bail Organa. This forces Obi-Wan to come out of hiding and face his past sins and eventually let them go. As a result, this is partially in order to eventually be able to commune with Qui-Gon Jinn and learn how to enter the Force like he did in A New Hope. Because at the moment, he can't contact him because he's essentially consumed by his past guilt for various things that happened. The person I trained as a child, who I viewed as a brother, student, and all around one of the closest people in my entire life, despite the fact Jedi weren't supposed to have attachments, went crazy and murdered everyone we cared about and turned our entire government into a fascist regime and is following the Sith Lord who caused it all. Oh, and also, his children are basically all I have left and I'm worried he'll kill them and destroy the last hope our galaxy has for both, his memory and also literally all life. It does a lot to disillusion you. And it really shows that Obi-Wan didn't just, sit in a cave at the whole time. He wanted to sit in the cave the whole time, but the universe and the Force had bigger plans for him. So yeah, this is a great plot, and quite frankly, I love the curve twist where it's actually Leia who gets kidnapped, because you can't really have Luke. Like, Leia was a well-known figure to, like, Darth Vader and the others, so her getting kidnapped for political reasons, or because one of the Inquisitors found out about a connection between Obi-Wan and her father, makes sense. Finding about Luke is something a lot more permanent that changes the plot, so they can't really do that. And I think it was better for them they didn't do that, because I think it's too easy to fall and stuff like that. Like, it would feel very fanficky, and I've read some of those fanfics, I will freely admit it. And I kind of like that dynamic, but it wouldn't fit into the current canon. So, it's overall very, very good. Darth Vader shows up and is appropriate badass. The fight scenes throughout this are very good, actually. More grounded than usual. You don't get a lot of the flips and acrobatics. There is one scene with, like, them chasing each other on rooftops, but aside from that, most of the fights have very realistic lightsaber forms, like the kind of things you saw more in the original trilogy and less what you saw in the prequels. The effects are pretty good overall. No real complaints, but nothing that stands out, so meh. The directing is better than expected, though, with really good camera work and a frequent use of Dutch angles to show Obi-Wan's distress or mental anguish. Nice touch there. Seriously, the person who did the camera work, I love it. Now, there are some people who hate Dutch angles. I think they're fun. I think they're interesting. I think they can add to the sense of unease in a scene, so I really liked it. The main antagonist who incites the main plot, you know, that Inquisitor, Reva, is really cool, and I love the misdirect in her intentions and her background, and you think you know what she's going for, but she doesn't, and I can't say anything else about that since her motivation is a twist. Specifically, it's part of a misdirect from the beginning of the show that happens midway through towards the end. Now, the show is only about 6 episodes long, but I will not be talking about that here. All you need to know is I think her overarching story and Obi-Wan's, the way it mirrors and the way it reflects in Anakin and Darth Vader, is all really, really good. And I enjoyed seeing Obi-Wan overcome his past failings, accept them, and try to work past them. His final fight with Vader in the last bit of the show is one of those rare moments in a prequel that actively adds context and makes the character motivations more fleshed out in a way I have rarely seen done. The only other time I've seen anything like this was in How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2, where there's a scene where Stoic confronts his hiccup, and you learn later more about his backstory and why he might feel that way, and one of his lines was like, oh, that has whole new context now. It's one of those moments where a past line that seemed very, I guess it's in their personality, becomes, oh, if that's their past, then yeah, I understand why all that happened. And it makes you like Obi-Wan more, made me like Obi-Wan more, most certainly, as a character. Especially for some of his more questionable actions later on in, you know, by telling Luke Vader killed his father and all that stuff. You get some more closure on that, and honestly, it should have felt half-hearted. It should have felt like they're trying to justify it. It actually makes me care more about those lines. It makes me think, you know what? Obi-Wan's less of a dick now for saying that. Honestly, it's way better than whatever Obi-Wan was trying to get across in the original, or whatever George Lucas had the plan there. I don't think he had a plan, but, you know, because the whole Star Wars was supposed to be an independent movie thing. So yeah, unfortunately, this cast is not all standouts. You had Ian McGregor as Obi-Wan. He was coming back to replace Vol. You actually even had flashbacks Anakin played by both Hayden Christensen and James Earl Jones. They both reprised their roles. And I will say, I actually liked Hayden Christensen in this. He doesn't there for long. It's like the small fight scenes meant to parallel overall moves. You know, sort of like the duel is compared to strategy thing. But I will say, you know what? If he had had this level of acting throughout the rest of the show, I might have actually given a shit about him in the prequels. Unfortunately, this does not make up for the prequels. Sorry, Hayden. Maybe you'll get a chance to do over one day, but today is not that day. However, we also have Ian McGregor as Obi-Wan. He's the guy who played him in the prequels. As for the others, you have Rupert Fiend as the Grand Inquisitor. He actually showed up in Rebels and stuff like that. I don't think this is the guy who played his voice actor. It's just a guy who's doing a really good job at the character. He's a pretty cool character. Mostly just like an intimidating villain. But he does have a lot more loyalty than Mois Ingram as Reva Svendar, or also the Third Sister. And she is a great villain. I can't really say more, but Vivian Lyra Blair, though. Oh my. This cast cannot all be standouts because Star Wars sucks at casting child actors. I don't know what the deal is, but every child in this series just does not react consistently. The most glaring example is in a flashback to a group of younglings during Order 66, where they see everyone, including their own teacher, dying. She's murdered right in front of them, but saves them. And they, all around the background, you see like the Jedi fighting off swarms of clones and going down one by one. There's actually this really cool background detail where, as they have their conversation and start running away, you see that most of the Jedi have already fallen by the time they start running. And they just, like, light by light, like, the lightsabers are just going out, like stars going out in the night sky. It's actually a really cool image if you actually focus on that. But the characters, the children, are just, what the hell? When one of them asks another, like, one was like, what do we do now? And the other one says, we run. And they just do it with no argument. They just, like, move. Like, none of the others speak. None of them are, like, nervous or upset. They're all, like, this is just another day, and it's just, like, this is a serious situation now. And it's, like, these are, like, 8-year-olds, 4-year-olds? Like, they're really young younglings. And it's just so weird. But at least they're Jedi-trained children. Like, they're children who have been trained from a young age to not feel certain emotions, because that's one of the Jedi's thing. And this emotional deadpan, although it does not jive with the tragedy happening around them, at least it's short and they're trained to do this kind of thing. So it makes sense in context, even if it doesn't feel right from an emotional storytelling perspective. Leia is just straight up inconsistent. They kind of want her to have this mental maturity whenever the plot demands it, so they just kind of, like, turn it on. Like, occasionally she'll act like a child, other times she'll be acting like basically an adult. And she just never talks like a 10-year-old. Like, even when she's having a tantrum, she's having, like, an adult tantrum. It's weird. They were going for the innocent, wise child, like, the child whose simple view means she's able to pick out things that a lot of adults ignore or whatever. They're kind of going for that world, like, not world-weary wise, but sort of, I don't see everything as negative so I can see more clearly than you in this scenario kind of wise. But it just falls completely flat. And I can't think of anything else they were trying to do with her, so I have no idea what they were doing here. The actor, look, it's a kid, but there are good child stars. Thankfully, Luke is pretty good, but he gets basically no lines, and his actions in the end are basically just him running away, which makes sense in the context, and he at least reacts to everything like a child. I think we only see, 3 or 4 scenes with him, but he's at least acting like a child, like he's sneaking off to play Imagine. He's a 10-year-old, But I feel like whenever they write it, it goes wrong. So yeah, the writer does not know how to write children, and it shows really, really hard. So why the hell is Netflix the only place, that you regularly see good child actors? Stranger Things, obviously, but there are a few others. I get it's difficult to find good acting at those ages, but if you're going to have kids in there, and you're going to have them, as a major part, like Leia is, you need to have them either shut up, or you need to have them be able to act. So you have to go that extra mile to find good child actors for stuff like this, because Leia is a constant presence. However, despite my gripes, when it comes down to it, I really liked Obi-Wan, and it has gotten me hopeful for the Ahsoka series in the future. Do not screw that up, Disney. Seriously, you have potential there. So, 8 out of 10. This would probably be a 9 out of 10 if it were not for Leia being a major component. I like it from a storytelling perspective. I do not like the child actor's implementation. Again, I think it's a good idea as a whole. I do not think the way it was implemented was good, and that takes down a point for me. So yeah, this is good Star Wars content. I recommend it. It's 6 episodes. They're about 30 to 40 minutes each. If you have time, check this out. It is far more worth your time than most of the other things out right now. And there's not a lot out right now. So, check it out. Alright, I think that's about it. We are done with the main review. So it's time for spoiler talk. And boy, do I have some stuff here. And I get to make a How to Your Dragon reference. So I'm really happy. Yay! So yeah. 3, 2, 1, spoilers are incoming. If you do not want spoilers, leave, go watch the show, and come on back. Okay, everybody doesn't want to be here? Great, let's go. So, first up, I want to talk about the villain, Reva. She is the third sister, one of the Inquisitors, basically, the Jedi witch hunters, who are really cool. Well, they were dumb, but they kind of become interesting and more complex as time goes on, since we, get a lot more depth and background with her. And the main plot twist with Reva is something that you think you see coming. See, at first, the other Inquisitors look down on her because she's very obsessive, and they constantly call her gutter trash because apparently they found her as a Force-sensitive child who came up to them and showed them their ability, but she was essentially, poverty-stricken, living in whatever scraps she'd get in rags. And they constantly belittle her for her poor upbringing. And how she likes to try and compensate by being audacious and reaching after her goals. And she's very obsessed with taking out a very specific Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, it's revealed about halfway through that and you can kind of infer this because she was one of the younglings. And you can guess this because she's the one who said, we must run, she's the one who was focused on the scene. But you don't know for certain, and even if you do, Vader spared tons of Jedi who showed dark side potential and used them as, tools to hunt down other Jedi. That's a regular thing that happened. That's already been well established in things like Rebels, or even some of not the later Clone War stuff, but I forget what other show they were in. Doesn't matter. But basically, yeah, so so she showed some rage or whatever, and Vader spared her life, or maybe he decided he didn't want to kill all the younglings. Even Darth Vader has some things. But no, it's actually more interesting than that. See, she was one of the younglings, and they actually made it pretty far. They almost made it out of the temple. But then the doors opened, and out stepped Anakin Skywalker, flanked by two clone troopers. And she said, and you don't see everything, you mostly see it through a few hazy images of bodies falling and stuff like that. But she tells us eventually that she thought he was there to save them. That maybe he had found loyal clone troopers and he was there to help them. And she only realized it not when one of her friends got a lightsaber through the chest. Yeah, we're going to the Anakin murders youngling things, people. This is not a good Vader or sympathetic Vader moment. It kind of is, mostly because you feel bad for the fact that he turned like this and the situation that did it, but you understand that he is full-on Vader at this moment. There's no regret here. There's none of the weary resignation there was in the his confrontation with Ahsoka and Rebels. There's just rage and anger, still very, very fresh. So yeah, he did try and kill them all, but she was smart. She took a glancing blow that wasn't fatal, but pretended she had gone stabbed somewhere else and fell to the ground, hiding among the dead corpses of her friends. The people who were essentially her siblings. And she laid there until everyone left, and she crawled out of the temple. And essentially was left homeless on Coruscant, where she eventually approached the Inquisitors. Now, it turns out Vader actually realized this and was impressed by her ingenuity, decided to see what she would do if she lived. Because he sensed the dark side in her, obviously. She was very angry about her friends getting murdered. So, yeah, when she approached him, he knew exactly who she was, because he had spared her life just to see what would happen. Not in a, I don't want to kill you way, but in a, you might be a useful tool way. Yeah, we're full on evil Vader right now. So, yeah, she doesn't really actually care about Obi-Wan. Now, she does hate Obi-Wan, which makes it easier for her to disguise her feelings so Vader doesn't detect what she's actually doing. The reason she's obsessed, though, is because she knows she was one of the younglings who was about to be murdered, so she knows who Vader is. Unlike essentially everyone in the Empire, except for a handful of rebels, Obi-Wan, one or two other Jedi, and again, even Ahsoka didn't know who Vader was. But she does. She's the only one of the Inquisitors that knows who he actually was. Not even the Grand Inquisitor is implied to know who he was. Which means she doesn't want to kill Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is a means to an end. Her obsession with Obi-Wan is actually Vader's obsession. Vader has been hunting Obi-Wan for years, and none of his Inquisitors can give her results. She has become more and more desperate to prove herself. A lot of the other things, she's just making a power play. She kind of is. She wants the title back when Inquisitor, and even almost kills the actual Grand Inquisitor, but he, eventually is revealed to have survived, using the Force to heal himself and leave, and come back later. But she tried to kill him, and he's believed dead for most of the series, just to get to Obi-Wan, because he was getting in her way. She wanted to get close to Vader. She wanted him obsessed. All his power used up in a fight. She wanted him off his guard and weak, so she could strike him down. Which is actually really smart. She's essentially playing to Vader's obsession and passing it off as her own. Because, like, a lot of the other Inquisitors make fun of her and they're constantly like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm hunting Obi-Wan Kenobi, the last of the great masters. It's like, Obi-Wan may very well be dead, and we haven't seen him in a decade. We have more important and more pressing matters, like this other Jedi that's getting away. It's like, but it doesn't matter. It's not a master. It's not Obi-Wan. And all the others are constantly like, Lord Vader would be very disappointed in you. But when she actually tells Lord Vader that I believe I know where she is, immediately, the moment she even thinks she has him and Vader believes her, he is like, all resources right there. She's in command. Because she knows that Anakin is obsessed with beating his old master who left him for dead. At this point in the timeline, Vader's anger is very squarely at Obi-Wan. He blames him for essentially everything. For betraying him, for Padme's death, even if he blames himself for it, he also blames Obi-Wan for putting him in that position. He feels like, as a part of the Jedi Council, he betrayed him. He's a Jedi, the thing Anakin essentially turned completely against. And he's also hid from him. He left Anakin for dead, didn't even have the balls to kill him, to put him out of his suffering, left him for Palpatine to scoop up, shove him into a rage robot, and then left him to essentially suffer in pain forever. He is pissed. And Reva knows this. Reva knows she can get to him like this. She knows she can exploit this. And it makes her come across as, like, at first she's very petulant and angry, but more in a sort of, I will scheme my way to the top by currying favor with Lord Vader. But when you realize that, oh, no, wait, this isn't her obsession, she's playing to Vader's obsession to her own ends, she comes across as actually kind of smart. Like, a lot of people want Lord Vader dead. Darth Maul wanted to kill Vader and Obi-Wan, the Rebels do, but she understands him. She knows about his past. She knows, to a certain extent, how he fell. She knows Obi-Wan fought him, but didn't kill him. Which is part of the reason she can fake being angry at Obi-Wan, because she didn't avenge her friends. She didn't avenge her siblings. He had a chance to kill Anakin. To her mind, he could have put an end to a lot of suffering. I mean, think about it. Vader is Palpatine's enforcer. He's how the Inquisitors have essentially been wrangled together. He's responsible for most of the Jedi hunts. And yeah, she's hunted Jedi too, but she's done it with the explicit aim of ending Vader. To her mind, she's paying more lives to put an end to something that will save countless more later on. And you really get a sense that she feels like this is not really for the greater good, but for her revenge, and it just so happens that this will benefit the universe as a whole in her mind. And yeah, she is a dark side user, but she's not evil. At least not in the sense that Vader was. Because she has a chance to be like Vader. See, Vader knew who she was, like I said. He's been playing her. After she turns on him, he wasted a lot of his power trying to rip a ship out of the air, only for a secondary ship to fly away once he was exhausted. And she tries to turn on him and stab him through the back. But Vader catches her lightsaber with the Force and throws her back and is like, I've known what you've been planning for years, but your ambitions serve me well. If you had only been a bit more competent, I'd have Obi-Wan right now. It seems you served your purpose, though. Shame. You were useful for a time. And it's just this moment of, oh shit, he's not tired enough for you, you should have teamed up with Obi-Wan when he offered. Because Obi-Wan offers to team up to take down Vader when she realizes that she's not all evil like the others. But she doesn't, and she's too arrogant and too desperate at this point because she's been found out to do anything other than try and fight him. And Vader kicks her ass. One thing I've really liked about Star Wars treatment, Disney's treatment of Star Wars, is that they have given Lord Vader the respect he deserves as a freaking monster and badass. In basically all of Disney's media, only the best of the best Force users can go up against Vader and not immediately get wrecked. In that game, Fallen Order, when your Jedi character who's just spent a few months trying to put his powers back together finds Lord Vader, he tries to hit him and gets thrown across the room, and then Vader starts ripping apart the arena as you run away like a coward. Because yeah, he's goddamn Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. You do not mess with him. And it's a recurring theme that unless you are a ridiculously powerful Force user like Obi-Wan or Ahsoka, you do not fight Darth Vader. And I like this because it doesn't degrade an important movie villain. It gives him the respect he deserves. But Reva tries fighting him anyway, and Vader embarrasses her by fending off the first half of her attacks by just dodging. Yeah, Vader steps past him. Remember, this is the guy in a cyborg prosthetic suit that's essentially a giant life support system. He is not that mobile. But she's just dodging her like it's no big deal, throwing a bit of force power to slam her against the wall every time she thinks she's getting cocky. And then then he decides to take out a lightsaber, he force grabs her dual lightsaber, chops it in half, breaks it in half, throws her one and ignites the other one for himself. And it's just this moment of, it doesn't matter if you have a weapon. I'm bored of using force powers to kick your ass. It's like, I gotta take out some aggression because Obi-Wan got away. You'll be good. And he ends up stabbing her through the stomach. Now, she does manage to survive. Force users are pretty durable. Basically, the rule of Force users, unless you see their head get tapped here, they come along with the Force. If they just get stabbed in the stomach and you don't see the light fade from their eyes, or they fall off a cliff, aka Darth Maul, they're probably not dead yet, though they might be dying. Like I said, we already saw the Grand Inquisitor get stabbed through the stomach earlier, so it's not that surprising she survived. But they didn't really care that she was alive. Darth Vader was like, I've embarrassed you, I've given you a, maybe not fatal, but probably pretty crippling wound, so you're not going to be a problem, and you're not really a problem in general. Either die or go crawl back to the gutter track where we found you. You don't matter. And it's just this moment of, wow. Like, he's been obsessively hunting Jedi for a while, but like, the ultimate F you to a Jedi survivor is just, you were just a youngling, and I used you already, so go crawl back to the gutter and die. It's just like, damn. You're not even worth enough to earn to kill you, and he kills Force users on principle that don't bow to him. Shit. So yeah, I'm actually very impressed with that. That whole scene was done very well. However, Reva finds Obi-Wan's communicator, which he dropped during the fight, and it had a message from Bail Organa talking about Luke Skywalker. And remember, she knows who Anakin is. So, Obi-Wan has a fight with Vader, because he basically, the ship they're getting away on doesn't have a hyperdrive, so he takes a small shuttle and leads Vader down to a planet, because Vader's obsession will cause him to focus on them rather than the rebels who are fleeing. And he does. This is actually a very in-depth exploration of how Vader's single-minded obsession over Obi-Wan was used against him in the early stages of the rebellion, which is actually a very fascinating exploration of his obsession with destroying his old past that he had. And Obi-Wan and him have a massive fight where actually Vader's the one who says, Anakin Skywalker is dead, I have killed him, which is something he also said to Ahsoka. And the fact that he actually actively says it to Obi-Wan when he's trying to get through to his... Like, Obi-Wan spends the first part of the fight not really trying as hard. He's suppressed most of his powers. He can't bring himself to fight against his student again. And Anakin's kind of kicking his ass. Obi-Wan puts up a good fight at the first, but the beginning, and he just starts begging. He's like, Anakin, please. I'm sorry, I failed you. The Order failed you. We should have seen what was happening. We should have helped you. It's like, Anakin is just like, no, it is far too late. You left me to die in a river of lava. You are the reason Padme's dead. You're the reason I lost everything and I now live in a life of eternal agony. Now, granted, it's partially Anakin's fault, partially the Jedi Order being blind, and partially Palpatine being a manipulative bastard. But it's not how Anakin sees things. And Obi-Wan realizes that this hatred, this is Darth Vader. Darth Vader, this hatred of all the things that Anakin believes took his life from him, killed Anakin Skywalker. And Vader just tells him, Anakin Skywalker is dead. Pleading to him will do you nothing. And Obi-Wan was like, I see. My friend truly is dead then. And so I shall take up my blade against you. And they have like an epic secondary fight, and it's great. And Obi-Wan manages to defeat him, but once more, as a consistent trait, Obi-Wan really cared about Anakin. Like, a lot. And he could not bring himself to kill him. And I think this fight does something very important. It characterizes Obi-Wan. So in the original trilogy, due to the way George Lucas wrote it, he didn't plan to do all these movies. And so when he said, oh yes, your father was a Jedi, and then eventually it was Darth Vader's your father, it causes inconsistency where it seems almost like, Obi-Wan and Yoda were trying to set up Luke to kill his father without him realizing it. Like, it's a very, it's a big implication that you see in a lot of fanfiction. Like, how could the Jedi be so cruel as to set up a child against his father while telling him that father killed his actual father? Like, that's messed up. And it is, until you get the context, that whole line of, in a certain way, from a certain point of view, is wrong until you hear it come out of Vader's own mouth, and then it comes more like they're protecting Luke. Like, think about it. Obi-Wan knew that Anakin had become so far gone that he's not sure he would even have spared his children. Like, he didn't spare Ahsoka when she asked. That's... Yeah. So, honestly, he's not wrong to not want Luke to try and help him. Because Obi-Wan tried. That's the thing. In the other one, it's he left him to rot on a planet and then hang out here and then he tells Luke to kill him. But if you have this as context, it means Obi-Wan tried to appeal to Vader to bring back Anakin, and he failed. And it adds this greater context of tragedy to Obi-Wan that he couldn't have brought Vader back because Vader blamed him. Vader was not willing to listen to him. Vader was only willing to listen to Padme or her children. And it wasn't just Luke was the only one who tried to reach out to Vader. Other people tried. Obi-Wan tried. Ahsoka tried. And the end result left Vader alone and broken. It's only after all those years that a lost child coming to him could make him want to turn back. And it turns it more into this larger redemptive arc of him fighting against the redemption for a lot longer, even though people tried to reach out for. And you might think it's a small thing, but having his old friends like Ahsoka and Obi-Wan have these moments where they try and reach out to the monster Vader has become adds depth to their characters and a weary resignation to the idea that Luke has to kill him that you don't get if you just watch the original trilogy. If you watch the original trilogy, it's a perfectly acceptable idea to think the Jedi are just monsters who set a kid against his father just because he was on the dark side and did a lot of bad things. Regardless of the reasoning, not telling Luke the truth so he can make his own choices was fucked up in the original. But in this context, it feels like they're more of trying to shield him, so it's more of good intentions with bad results, rather than bad actions for the betterment of the world, which comes across as really, really cruel to Luke as a whole. This comes more across as Obi-Wan seeing Luke as the last thing he has left of the old Anakin, and not really being able to bring himself to explain to this child that his father is a monster, and he kind of wants to preserve the memory of who Anakin was through Luke. Obi-Wan didn't want Luke to ever know about who Vader was. Not so Luke would kill Vader. In fact, Obi-Wan himself never actually tried to get Luke to fight Vader. The only time they encountered him, he distracted Vader so Luke could get away. Now, people put that as Luke, giving him a hero to avenge, a mentor to revenge, but I see it more as protection, because Obi-Wan was his best friend. Ahsoka was like a daughter or a sister to Anakin. All the other Jedi were essentially brethren. Like, not all of them were on the council being assholes. And Anakin just killed them all. He tried to kill Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan could not get through to him. He had no reason to believe that Luke would be any different, because why would a son be any different when his wife failed? Obi-Wan, essentially a brother/father figure, failed. Ahsoka, a daughter/sister figure, failed. Who was he to assume Luke would be any different? If anything, Luke knowing would probably only have gotten him killed. Now, granted, this underestimated Vader's ability to be redeemed. In fact, Ahsoka might have been able to do it if she had been given the right scenario, but she was just in a bad situation, and Vader was unwilling to do it when she thought he was trying to shield the Jedi. But Luke was in this odd scenario of essentially being something Vader thought he had lost forever. Something he had thought he would never get back. A spark of the life he could have had, essentially. Whereas Obi-Wan and Ahsoka reminded him of how righteous his cause was. Obi-Wan because he hated him and believed him to be a traitor to him. And Ahsoka because she didn't join him and because she was a reminder of how the Jedi Council failed. because she was blamed for treason and they didn't even support her, even though she was one of their own. Anakin had to figure out that she was being framed, and then she left because disillusioned. Essentially, Ahsoka was almost proof that Anakin was right to betray the Jedi, that he should have died earlier. She should have left with Ahsoka. They couldn't have gone through to him because their relationship only emphasized that Vader was right. Sorry, I had to get through that because I think it adds depth in a way that, again, like I said in the main review, not a lot of things do. The only other thing I saw was the How to Train Your Dragon thing, and actually you can talk about that here because I have a bit more time. And How to Train Your Dragon 1, because I will never get sick of talking about that movie, there's a moment where Hiccup is revealed to have protected the dragon, and dragons raid their village, so they're like, why'd you do this? You have betrayed us all. His father has this whole breakdown where he's like, oh, dragon, I should have seen the signs. How could you do this? And there's that odd moment of, I should have seen the signs. And when I first watched it, and then the hundreds of times I've watched it since, I had this moment of, what signs? He's the first Viking to ever try and do this, right? Or at least the one who's ever succeeded. How would you know what signs to look for? But in the second movie, it's revealed that his mother tried to make peace with the dragons, but was carried off by one and was believed dead. And so, to Stoic, his actions suddenly go from motivated by rage to motivated by sheer panic. Because he feels immediately bad when, like verbally disowning Hiccup and saying, you're not my son, how could you ever do this to us? And he, collapsed after that. But the whole, you should have seen the signs, I should have done something, never really goes away. And it stuck with me until the second movie, when it's revealed that his wife would have shown those signs. If someone had been around, he'd probably been like, what is he doing in the woods? The sympathy, the odd, peaceful ways of taking down dragons. He's blaming himself for not seeing his wife's tragedy playing out again. And it frames his actions as less angry and more desperate to prevent another family member from being carried off from what he perceives as foolishness, but was actually compassion that was needed to save the day. And it's a similar thing here, where it changes Obi-Wan's motivation towards trying to get Luke to kill Vader to trying to protect Luke from Vader because he believes Vader will kill Luke. And he has a really good reason to, because every other person Vader was close to that has tried to come to him to appeal to his better nature he has either tried to or succeeded in killing. And it makes his actions defendable, which is very important to me personally. I think it is one of the few pieces of prequel or flashback material that adds to the narrative it was originally meant to continue. And I can respect that in a way I cannot usually. I don't respect Rogue One, because that doesn't really give you context. It just says, these are how the pieces move from plot A to point B. This gives you emotional reasoning behind why the characters did what they did, which is really important. Now, moving on to Reva, because that's the last loose end I got tying up for you guys. And I don't want to talk about Leia, she's just annoying. So Reva, while Obi-Wan's fighting Vader, Reva is hops in the shuttle that she steals and manages to get to Tatooine because she's realized that Vader has a son. She can't kill Vader. She's realized that she has ruined her only chance. The only way she ever could have gotten his guard down was by bringing Obi-Wan to him and letting him revel in his victory just until she stabbed him in the back. She has no illusions of being able to beat Vader, which is very reasonable after she tried and failed. However, she can get revenge. She can do to him what he did to her. Because he killed all her siblings. So she'll kill his son. And there's this moment of, kind of justice for Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, who always get kind of dismissed in Star Wars canon, which I find funny. A lot of people just see them as the obstacle to get Prince Luke from getting off the planet. I'm just like, they could have actually been characters, Fridging is a horrible trope. Anyhow, they actually get a decent amount of characters. Owen is very protective of Luke, and you get why he doesn't want him to leave the planet now when you realize just the extent to which Darth Vader fell. And he's like, yeah, my half-brother is completely mad, and I will not let him find my nephew, who I have raised as a son, and let him get killed because his father is a sociopath. Again, fair. And also, Aunt Beru gets to be a freaking badass. So Reva gets there, and she's dying. She's not full power Inquisitor and all that. She can barely hold her lightsaber and stand up at the same time. So, not exactly in deep fighting form, but Owen gets warned that some Inquisitor is looking for him and his family, so he essentially gets Luke stored away in a back room with a secret exit. Him and Beru barricade the doors, and they tell Luke that there is the Tusken Raiders. They've come. There's some strange person with them, and he needs to run if they get past them because they're going to be coming from the children. So Luke is like very scared, but he's like, okay. And he goes to hide in his room. That's basically all the lines you get from him in this series, I will add. The child actor does a decently good job, though, of just being scared. And trying to act like he isn't scared. But, so that's nice. And Ogolo and Beru pull out the laser shotguns they have and start barricading up with, like, various household objects. And essentially building, like, a little fortification. And they don't just, like, fire randomly. They have an actual plan set up. It's like, you're suddenly reminded, oh, right, they live in the middle of the desert on a planet where there are people who will just, like, raid them and murder sometimes. They have to be, like, well-armed and actually know how to use a rifle. So when she comes in, they try and ambush her. Obviously it doesn't work, because even an Inquisitor, like, on her last legs can only be stalled by a few guys with laser guns. Not killed. They're not a whole group of stormtroopers, after all. So she eventually gets past them, but they actually put up a decent fight, which, I mean, she's dying, but she's also a Force user, so a normal sentient being put against good fight against a Force user, even as they're dying, is impressive. And Luke runs away, and she chases after him. Obi-Wan comes, as she corners Luke and manages to survive on the planet, but they're all looking for him. And she essentially, Luke never sees her or the lightsaber. He runs away, he only sees a dim silhouette chasing him, and she uses the Force to pull him off a cliff that he's been running away through a ravine. He falls down, knocked unconscious. So it keeps with the whole Luke's never seen a lightsaber and all that jazz. Because, he can't actually see her, because that would hold the whole thing of, what's this strange weapon? Oh, right, wasn't I murdered by someone with these? No, he never sees her, so if you're worried about canon, there. Anyway, there she is. She has it. Her revenge. Obi-Wan is too far away to help her. They don't know where, the aunt and uncle don't know where she is. Obi-Wan's only just arrived. She has all the time in the world to kill Vader's son. But then she starts seeing herself, her younger self, and she suddenly realizes, I'm Vader. To this kid, I'm Vader. I'm about to kill an innocent child because they belong to a group or to someone I have grown to hate because of a personal tragedy they have inflicted upon me. That's literally how Vader justified his slaughtering of the younglings. Because he had to save Padme and the Jedi Order wouldn't help him. That's how he justified her tragedy. And it's just this beautiful moment of you actually believe it. That she's she's actually a parallel to Vader. And she says no. And she has this moment of, like, she's not proud that she says no. She doesn't come to the realization. She's just, like, crying. Like, she brings Luke back, sets him down. They see that he's alive, and they go up to him. The aunt and uncle run back to the house. But Obi-Wan just stares at her, and she's just, like, breaking down to tears. Because her entire life since surviving Order 66 has been, I must avenge those I lost. That's it. That's all she's had for all these years. And she just starts sobbing, crying out to her, fellow youngling siblings, saying, I'm sorry, I couldn't avenge you. I'm so sorry, I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. And Obi-Wan is just, like, looking at this person who essentially has caused him nothing but problems, but the situation she forced him in forced him to grow and learn, and he's ready to be a mentor again. Which sets him up to eventually be, train under Qui-Gon's ghost and become the mentor we know from A New Hope. And having started down that path, he's now willing, when, someone from some Force user before him in trouble, he's willing to help them. And he just tells her something really simple, that it's not that the fact that you didn't kill him is what will finally put their spirits to rest. They can rest easy in the Force, knowing that their sister did not become the monster that killed them. And it's just this sad moment. And she doesn't die. Reva, I was assuming that she was going to, like, keel over dead and say, thank you, Obi-Wan. Oh. And she doesn't die. She doesn't keel over. She's just there. And she has to... One of the things I've really hated about all the times, like, the redemption equals death thing is it doesn't allow the character to actually be redeemed. It just means they were willing to be redeemed and they're dead, so I guess we have to accept they're redeemed now. But Reva has done some horrible things. She's killed Jedi. She helped string up the Jedi we saw in the beginning of the series. she actually has some things to redeem herself for. So she throws aside her red lightsaber, essentially casting off the dark side, and trying to be redeemed in the light. Essentially, like Vader will eventually become by Luke. Again, more parallels there. But she decides that she's not going to be like this anymore. She's not going to be a monster. She's not going to become the monster that killed her family and everyone she ever loved and destroyed her life. And then the series just ends. She's alive. Like, there's no implication that she's died. So she's an actual character in this world that I am very interested to see more of. It'll be very interesting seeing essentially a recovering Sith who's been tossed aside by Vader, who has found herself unable to fall to his level to get revenge, and is now trying to turn back to the light. I would be interested to see what her journey is. If they want to do a sequel to this series where Obi-Wan is maybe talking with her, because obviously we don't see her in the later movies, which means she's probably either going to die or retire or something. She's probably going to eventually die, but I would really like to see what her adventures are as she tries to redeem herself. Like, does she get to redeem herself before she dies? That would be very interesting, I think. So, yeah. I also like what they did with Obi-Wan at the end, where Qui-Gon's ghost, Yoda told him, teach you to commune with him, I will. And Obi-Wan was just like, part of the reason he's depressed at the beginning is because Qui-Gon won't answer him, and it's because Qui-Gon knows he has to come to terms with himself, he has to center himself before he can open up to the Force fully again. Which is why he's only able to use that really powerful Force attack, where he throws boulders at Vader, once he's, finally accepted that Anakin cannot be saved, and he must protect the people that currently exist right now. So yeah, I think this was an excellent exploration of the characters. However, you might have noticed that this is a series about protecting Leia, and I spent a lot of it talking about these other characters. That's why this only gets an 8 out of 10, because this is some really good stuff in my opinion, and quite frankly some of the best Star Wars stuff. I'll just say that outright. But oh my gosh, does it have some of the worst too. Ugh, I swear. Anyhow, that's my very long opinion on a 6-part miniseries, so I guess I will see you guys next time. Coming up this coming week, I'm sorry I did not stream this week, but I've had a lot going on. Work has been very busy, and I've actually been on call this week. And usually I'd be willing to stream, but I've actually been getting called most days this week, so I did not want to put that there. We've been very busy moving over to a new server for my job. I'm part of an infrastructure team on a programming job, so it's been very busy. I'm sorry about that, but I will be starting to stream next week. Let's see, what did we have scheduled for that? Oh, right. I was going to get back into Warframe. See, I played Warframe back in the day, and I was going to just spend a week, playing it again. So we'll have those 2 days, and hopefully I will figure out a new release after that. Moving on, I also have some new things to be reviewed. So on next Tuesday, I will be reviewing the new Rachel Aaron book, because I have it, I'm reading it, The Last Stand of Mary Good Crow. And it's going to be interesting. It's about the gold rush, but what if it was a Lovecraft, but what if they found some magical mineral that have Lovecraftian implications? And she hears its voice calling to her, so she got fueled through the tunnels until a wealthy benefactor makes her go deeper and deeper. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've read the first 2 chapters, and I'm really, really liking it, so fingers crossed. It's Rachel Aaron, though. She does good characters, so I'm all on board. After that, I will be reviewing The Umbrella Academy Season 3. I really love that show, so it's looking like a good week next week. Let's do it. See you guys next time. Bye. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and thank you for listening to The Dragon's Library. Please subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes. The Dragon's Library releases new episodes Tuesday and Friday each week, and you can follow us on Twitter at dragon_library2. If you want to suggest an episode topic, my email is in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for all your support.